The morning of October 12, 1983, broke over Mill Creek, Ohio, with a sky heavy as a bruise, gray clouds sagging low, promising rain that never came. The air was sharp, thick with the scent of harvested corn, damp earth, and the faint rot of leaves piling in ditches along Route 7. The road, a two-lane strip of cracked asphalt, wound through endless fields, past sagging barns, rusted silos, and the occasional weathered farmhouse, connecting the town's 1,200 souls to a world that felt impossibly distant. At 7:14 a.m. Bus 42, a yellow relic from the 1960s, with peeling paint and a clutch that stuck like a stubborn mule, rumbled along its morning route, its engine coughing and sputtering, a low growl that echoed across the quiet fields. Inside, 12 children filled the cabin with a chaotic symphony: laughter, shouts, the snap of a rubber band, the rustle of comic book pages, the faint whiff of peanut butter, wax crayons, and the sweet tang of apple juice. Harold Grayson, 42, gripped the steering wheel with calloused hands, his knuckles white from years of wrenching tools and mending fences. His denim jacket, faded and patched at the elbows, hung loose on his lean frame, and his baseball cap sat low over graying hair that curled at his neck. Born and raised in Mill Creek, Harold had never left, tethered to the town by roots deeper than the oak trees lining his property. He lived alone in a sagging farmhouse on the town's edge, a place too big for one man, its walls holding memories of his wife, Ellen, who died of breast cancer in 19. They'd married at 19, built a life of small quiet joys, Sunday drives to Lake Milton, her laughter over burnt pancakes, her marigold garden that bloomed like fire in the summer. Now the farmhouse was silent, the garden choked with weeds, the marigolds long gone. Harold's life was routine: wake at 5 a.m., coffee black, drive the kids, tinker with his '72 Ford pickup, sleep by 9. Children on Bus 42 were his anchor, their voices a tether to a world that felt emptier every year. He knew their names, their quirks, their dreams, as if they were his own, a patchwork family to fill the void Ellen left behind. In the third row, Tommy Weber, 8, clutched his Spider-Man lunchbox, its red and blue logo scratched from months of being tossed in the dirt during recess. His gap-toothed grin flashed as he traded a Twinkie for a pack of baseball cards with Michael Chen, his best friend since kindergarten. Tommy was the class clown, always ready with a knock-knock joke, his laughter a shield against the quiet of home. His father, Greg, had walked out in 1981, leaving Tommy and his mother, Linda, in a rented trailer on the edge of town. Linda worked double shifts at the Mill Creek diner, her hands cracked from dishwater, her eyes tired but fierce with love. Tommy helped with chores, carrying groceries, washing dishes, but at night he'd lie awake, staring at the trailer's tin ceiling, dreaming of being Johnny Carson, making millions laugh on a stage far from Ohio's fields. He'd practice his jokes in the mirror, his small voice mimicking Carson's smooth delivery. Knock knock, who's there? Banana, banana, you glad I'm here? He'd giggle, then fall silent, wondering if his dad was watching TV somewhere laughing at someone else. Sarah Klein, 10, sat across the aisle, her nose buried in a Nancy Drew mystery, The Secret of the Old Clock, her glasses slipping down her freckled nose. She wanted to be a detective, solving cases with a flashlight and a notebook, her imagination alight with clues and conspiracies. Her father, Paul, a mechanic at Klein's Auto, scoffed at her dreams, his voice rough from years of shouting over engines. Books won't pay the rent, he'd say, pushing her toward practical things, math, typing, a future at the shop. Sarah read in secret, hiding her novels under her bed, her flashlight her only accomplice. She'd underline passages, dreaming of unraveling mysteries, her pencil marking clues about hidden staircases and stolen jewels. On the bus she barely looked up, lost in her story, her fingers tracing the pages as if they held the key to her future. The twins, Ellie and Emma Ellis, 9, sat in the back, their blonde braids swinging as they whispered secrets in a language only they understood. Ellie was the leader, bold and quick to climb trees or sneak into abandoned barns, her eyes bright with mischief. Emma followed, quieter, her trust in her sister absolute, her laughter softer but just as bright. Their parents Mary and Tom ran Ellis's Grocery, a cramped store on Main Street, their days long and their tempers frayed from balancing books and stocking shelves. The twins found freedom in each other, their bond a fortress against their parents' stress, their giggles a rebellion against the world's weight. On the bus they played a game, passing a folded note back and forth, each adding a silly drawing, a cat with a hat, a dog with glasses, until they dissolved into laughter, their braids bouncing. Joey Russo, 7, sat near the front, puffing on his inhaler, his asthma worse in the fall's damp chill. Small and nervous, he checked his watch obsessively, terrified of being late for school, for dinner, for lunch. His mother, Clara, a seamstress at the town's only tailor, hovered over him, her worry a constant shadow. She'd pack his lunch with extra care, apple slices, a granola bar, a note saying "Breathe easy, my star." But Joey's fears were bigger than her love. He dreamed of being an astronaut, soaring above the clouds where his lungs wouldn't betray him, but each wheeze tethered him to earth, his anxieties whispered in every breath. On the bus he sat stiffly, his inhaler clutched like a lifeline, his eyes darting to the window, watching the fields for something he couldn't name. Becca Thompson, 11, sang softly to herself, off-key but earnest, her voice carrying dreams of a choir she'd never joined. Her parents, Roy and Diane, worked at the tire factory in Canton, their shifts leaving little time or money for lessons. Becca sang in the fields behind their trailer, her voice mingling with the wind, her songs about rivers and stars she'd made up herself. She'd hum on the bus, her melody faint but persistent, a quiet defiance against a world that told her to be practical. Her classmates teased her sometimes, but Harold would glance back in the rearview mirror, a small smile tugging at his lips, her voice a reminder of Ellen's humming while she guarded. Michael Chen, 9, sketched dinosaurs on his math homework, his pencils scattered across the seat like scattered bones. He wanted to be a paleontologist, digging up secrets of the past, his room filled with library books about Triceratops and Velociraptor. His mother, May, a nurse at the county hospital, pushed him toward medicine, her voice firm but kind. "Doctors save lives, not bones," she'd say, her pride in him tempered by practicality. Michael drew in defiance, his T-Rex sketches a rebellion against her expectations, his pencil scratching out worlds where he was free to chase dreams. On the bus he showed Tommy a new drawing, a stegosaurus with a spiked tail, grinning as Tommy clapped him on the back. Lila Patel, 10, hid a spiral notebook under her jacket, filled with poems about stars, rivers and the moon's quiet pull. She'd never show them to her father, Vikram, a pharmacist who valued grades over dreams, his accent clipped from years in Ohio after moving from Gujarat. "Poetry doesn't pay," he'd say, his eyes on her report card, not her words. Lila wrote in secret, her poems a refuge from his expectations, her pen tracing lines like "The river knows where it's going, even when I don't." On the bus, she scribbled in her notebook, her handwriting small, her eyes darting to make sure no one saw. Danny Ortiz, 8, bragged about his skateboard, a beat-up board he'd found at a garage sale, though he cried when he fell, his bravado masking a fear of disappointing his older brothers. Miguel and Carlos, who were in high school, their lives loud with parties and fights. Danny wanted to be like them, tough and fearless, but his scrapes and bruises told a different story. On the bus he'd talk big, saying he'd landed a kickflip, but Tommy would tease, "Yeah right, you landed on your butt," and Danny would laugh, his cheeks red, his heart racing. Jenny Holt, 9, drew horses on her folders, her pencil sketching manes and hooves with a dreamer's precision. She begged her farmer parents, Mabel and Jim, for a horse, her voice bright with hope. They'd refuse, their faces tight with guilt, unable to afford it on a farmer's income, their fields barely breaking even. Jenny would ride her bike to the Holt farm's edge, watching the neighbors' horses, naming them in her head, Star, Thunder, Mid. On the bus, she showed Sarah a drawing, whispering, "Someday I'll have one." Timmy Brooks, 7, collected bottle caps, his pockets jangling with them, dreaming of a candy store where he'd sell sweets to every kid in town. His family lived in a cramped apartment above the hardware store, his father Bill, a janitor, his mother Susan, a part-time cashier. Timmy's optimism was a light in their small world, his chatter about bubblegum and licorice a constant hum. On the bus he'd sort his caps, trading a Pepsi cap for one of Michael's pencils, his grin wide. Rachel Cohen, 10, read astronomy books, her backpack stuffed with library copies of The Stars, A New Way to See. She'd named constellations in her backyard, her finger tracing Orion's belt. Her rabbi father, David, proud but puzzled by her obsession. God made the stars, he'd say, but why do you love them so? Rachel didn't know how to explain the pull of the sky, its vastness a promise of something bigger. On the bus, she'd point out the window, telling Nate about Cassiopeia, her voice soft but Nate Evans, 11, played basketball, his lanky frame dodging defenders on the school court, his shots clumsy but determined. His father John, a former high school star turned insurance agent, pushed him hard, his voice booming at practices. You've got my genes, Nate, don't waste them. Nate hid his fear of failing, his stomach knotted with pressure. On the bus he'd bounce a small rubber ball, his eyes distant, dreaming of a game where he didn't feel his father's shadow. The bus approached Deadman's Bend, a railroad crossing where Route 17 met tracks abandoned since the 1950s, their steel rusted, their ties rot. The name came from a legend older than Mill Creek itself, whispered in barrooms, church basements and around kitchen tables. In 1897, a freight train derailed at the crossing, killing its conductor, Elias Crow, a solitary man who ran the midnight route from Canton to Youngstown. Locals said his lantern swung in the fog, his whistle calling lost souls, his shadow lingering where the tracks met the road. The story was old, frayed, told to scare kids from wandering too close, but the crossing felt wrong, the air heavier, the fog thicker than anywhere else. A single red signal blinked lazily, its light dulled by years of neglect, a tired sentinel in a forgotten place. Harold slowed the bus, the brakes hissing like a sigh, and stopped, the engine idling with a low, uneven rumble. Protocol was protocol, even on a dead line. He glanced at the tracks, half hidden in the morning mist, and waited, his hands steady on the wheel. Tommy flicked a paper football at Danny, who laughed and flicked it back. Sarah turned a page, her glasses slipping. Joey puffed his inhaler, his breath shallow. Becca's soft singing drifted through the cabin, a melody about a river flowing home. In the fields nearby, Ed Callahan, 52, paused his work, leaning on his shovel, his back aching from years of tilling the same stubborn earth. He'd grown up in Mill Creek, married young, buried a son to leukemia in 75, and carried the weight of it in his slumped shoulders. He glanced up, seeing the bus idling, its exhaust curling into the fog like smoke signal. Then he heard it, a whistle, sharp and mournful, not like any train he'd known in his years near the tracks. It cut through the morning, raising the hairs on his neck, a sound that didn't belong, alive and keening, like a cry from something lost. Mabel and Jim Holt, working their own field a quarter-mile away, heard it too, their heads snapping up from their harvest. Mabel, 40, her hair tied back with a faded scarf, froze, her hands tightening on her hoe. Jim, 42, squinted into the fog, his brow furrowed, his hands calloused from years of plowing. The whistle wasn't mechanical, it was alive, a wail that burrowed into the bone. The fog thickened, swirling around the bus like fingers closing, and when it cleared moments later, the bus was gone. No screech of tires, no crash, no rumble of an engine fading, just silence, heavy and wrong, the kind that presses against your chest. Ed dropped his shovel, his heart pounding, and sprinted to the crossing, his boots sinking into the soft dirt, his breath ragged. Mabel, Jim, he shouted, his voice cracking like dry wood. They ran to him, their faces pale, their breaths visible in the cold air. They stood at the crossing, staring at the empty road, the tracks untouched, no sign of the bus's 40-foot frame. It was right there, Ed stammered, pointing at the rails, his hands shaking. I saw it, clear as day. Then nothing. Mabel, her hands trembling, crossed herself, whispering a prayer she hadn't said since her mother's funeral. Jim walked the length of the crossing, his eyes scanning the ground, his boots leaving prints in the dirt. He found tire tracks, fresh, deep impressions, leading straight to the rails, then stopping abruptly, as if the bus had driven into the earth itself. No skid marks, no swerve, no sign it had turned or reversed. This ain't possible, Jim muttered, kneeling by the tracks, his fingers brushing the cold steel. his mind racing for an explanation that wouldn't come. They searched the ditches, calling for Harold, for the kids, their voices, swallowed by the fog that seemed to press closer, heavier, like a living thing. Mabel spotted it first, half buried in the weeds by the roadside. Tommy Wibber's lunchbox, its Spider-Man logo scratched but unmistakable, glinting in the dim light. She picked it up with trembling hands, her breath catching in her throat. "This is Tommy's," she said, her voice barely a whisper, her eyes wide with fear. She opened it, expecting a sandwich, an apple, maybe a note from Linda. Inside was a peanut butter sandwich, untouched, an apple, red and unblemished, and a folded copy of the Mill Creek Gazette, dated that morning, October 12, 1983. A classified ad was circled in red ink, the lines uneven, as if drawn in a hurry. "Need babysitter, nights only, call after." The number was local, a 4119 area code, but when Jim ran to a nearby payphone at the gas station a mile away and dialed, it rang to a dead line, the silence on the other end colder than the fog, a void that offered no answers. Sheriff Dan Carver got the call his coffee still steaming on his desk at the Mill Creek Sheriff's Office. A squat brick building with peeling paint, a single holding cell, and a radio that crackled with static. At 50, Dan was a man of routine, his life measured in coffee cups, patrol routes, and the occasional speeding ticket handed out to teenagers racing down Route 7. His limp, a souvenir from a high school football injury that ended his dreams of college ball, slowed him but didn't stop him. He'd seen drunks, bar fights, and the occasional barn fire, but nothing like this, nothing that made his gut twist like a wrung cloth. He grabbed his hat, called for his deputy, Carl Jenkins, a lanky 25-year-old with a nervous habit of cracking his knuckles, and sped to the crossing in his cruiser, the siren cutting through the morning quiet, its wail a pale echo of the whistle. Ed described. The scene at Dead Man's Bend was chaos, a knot of fear and confusion. Ed, Mabel and Jim stood by the tracks, talking over each other, their voices high with panic, their hands gesturing wildly. Ed pointed at the spot where the bus had been, his hands shaking, his face pale, under his weathered cap. "It was right there, Dan, I swear it, yellow as day, idling, then poof, gone." Mabel held the lunchbox, her eyes wide, her fingers clutching it like a lifeline. "It's Tommy Wibber's, Dan, I know it. Jenny's in his class." Jim showed Dan the tire tracks, his voice low, almost a whisper. "They just stopped, Sheriff, right at the rails, like the ground ate him." Dan knelt by the tracks, his bad knee protesting, and traced the marks with a gloved hand. They were fresh, deep, ending abruptly at the rails. No skid, no swerve, no sign of a turn. He opened the lunchbox, his fingers steady despite the chill creeping up his spine, a cold that wasn't just the October air. The newspaper was crisp, the red ink vivid, the ad's words stark. "Need babysit, nights only, call after 12. He read it twice, then handed it to Carl, his voice tight. "Bag it, get it to the station, no one touches it." By noon Mill Creek was a hive of panic, its quiet rhythm shattered. Volunteers gathered, farmers in work boots, teachers with worried eyes, men from the VFW hall, women from the church auxiliary, forming search parties that fanned out across the fields, their shouts echoing over the cornstalks. State police arrived, their cruisers clogging Route 17, their radios crackling with orders. FBI agents followed, pulling up in black sedans, their faces unreadable behind dark sunglasses, their questions sharp and clinical. Helicopters thumped overhead, their blades slicing through the fog that lingered longer at Dead Man's Bend than anywhere else, a thick gray shroud that seemed to swallow sound and light. Divers checked Mill Creek, a shallow stream barely 3 feet deep, finding nothing but mud, minnows and a rusted bicycle frame. The tire tracks were photographed, measured, cast in plaster by a forensics team from Columbus, their equipment scattered across the crossing like tools of a futile ritual. Experts muttered about sinkholes, but the ground was solid bedrock, undisturbed. A meteorologist from the National Weather Service, called in by the FBI, ruled out tornadoes. The morning had been calm, no wind above a breeze, no weather event to explain a 40-foot bus vanishing without a trace. The lunchbox was sent to a lab in Cleveland, the newspaper analyzed, The ad traced. The number led nowhere. A disconnected line registered to no one. Its origin a dead end. Helen Walsh, the Gazette's chain-smoking editor, 55, with a voice like gravel, and eyes sharp from years of catching typos, swore she'd never printed the ad. She sat in her cluttered office, the air thick with cigarette smoke, flipping through bound copies of the Gazette from I'd remember something that creepy, she told Dan, lighting a Camel, her hands steady despite the news. Nights only, after 12. That's no ad I'd run. It's not in any issue. She checked every page, her fingers smudged with ink, finding no trace of the ad, no record of payment, no name attached. It's like it was printed for that one paper in the lunchbox, she said, exhaling a cloud of smoke, her eyes narrowing, like it was meant to be found. The town hall, a squat brick building with flickering fluorescent lights, rows of folding chairs and a podium that wobbled, became a war room, its walls plastered with maps, flyers and photos of the missing children. The families gathered there, their faces pale, their hands clutching relics of their kids, photos, toys, a favorite sweater. Linda Weber sat in the front row, Tommy's lunchbox in her lap, her fingers tracing the Spider-Man logo as if it could summon him back. He never forgets it, she whispered, her eyes red from crying, her voice breaking. He loved that thing. Why'd he leave it? Paul Klein paced the back of the room, his grease-stained hands clenched into fists, his voice rough with anger and fear. Sarah's tough. She's out there waiting for us. My girl doesn't give up. Mary and Tom Ellis, the twins' parents, sat holding hands, their faces hollow. Their grocery store shuttered for the first time in years, its shelves untouched. Clara Russo, Joey's mother, kept his inhaler in her pocket, her fingers brushing it like a talisman, her prayers a steady murmur under her breath. The other parents, Becca's, Michael's, Lila's, Danny's, Jenny's, Timmy's, Rachel's, Nate's, formed a circle, trading stories of their children, their voices raw with hope and fear, their words a lifeline to keep the kids alive in their mind.
Becca's father, Roy Thompson, a burly man with a factory worker's hands, spoke of her singing, how she'd hum in the kitchen, her voice bright even when off-key, her songs about rivers and stars, a light in their small trailer. Diane, her mother, nodded, tears falling, saying Becca would sing to her little brother, calming him when he cried. Mei Chen, Michael's mother, showed a sketch of a velociraptor he'd drawn, her pride battling her grief, her voice soft as she described his room, filled with dinosaur books and fossils he'd found in the creek. Vikram Patel, Lila's father, sat stiffly, his silence heavy, unable to admit he'd never read her poems, his focus always on her grades, her future as a doctor or engineer. Rosa Ortiz, Danny's mother, cried softly, saying he'd been practicing skateboard tricks to impress his brothers, his laughter echoing in their small house. Mabel Holt, Jenny's mother, clutched a drawing of a horse, her guilt sharp. She'd promised Jenny a pony someday, a promise now broken, her voice trembling as she spoke of Jenny's love for animals. Bill Brooks, Timmy's father, a janitor with tired eyes, held a jar of bottle caps, his voice breaking as he described Timmy's dream of a candy store, his optimism a spark in their cramped apartment. David Cohen, Rachel's father, a rabbi with a gentle voice, spoke of her star charts, her love for the night sky, his pride mixed with confusion at her passion for something so vast. John Evans, Nate's father, a former basketball star turned insurance agent, admitted he'd pushed Nate too hard, his regret a weight he couldn't shed, his voice low as he described Nate's clumsy shots on the court, his determination shining through. Harold Grayson's life was torn open, dissected by police, reporters and neighbors desperate for answers. His farmhouse, a mile from town, was searched top to bottom, its rooms aired out for strangers to pick through. His '72 Ford pickup was impounded, its engine cold, its keys still in the ignition from his last drive. His belongings were catalogued, a stack of Louis L'Amour novels, dog-eared and worn, a radio tuned to a country station, its dial stuck on WKSU, a photo of Ellen on the mantle, her smile frozen in 1977, her eyes bright with a life cut short. Neighbors described him as quiet, kind, a man who'd fixed their fences, mowed their lawns, brought casseroles to church potlucks after Ellen's death. His sister Ruth Grayson, 40, drove from Toledo, her voice fierce as she faced the press outside the sheriff's office. Harold loved those kids, she told Dan, tears streaming down her face, her hands clenched. He'd have died before letting anything happen to them. He was a good man, Dan. You know that. But the rumors spread, fueled by fear and the need for a scapegoat. Harold was depressed, drinking, hiding something, planning to run. The tire tracks told a different story. No swerve, no escape, but suspicion clung to him like the fog at Dead Man's Bend, heavy and unyielding. Dan searched Harold's house himself, late at night, the flashlight beam cutting through the dark rooms. He found a personal journal, not the one that would surface later, but a small leather-bound book tucked in a nightstand drawer. The entries were sparse, written in Harold's careful slanted script. Memories of Ellen, regrets about a child they never had, notes about the kids on his route. October 5, 1983. Tommy told a new joke today. Something about a banana. Made me laugh. Sarah's reading another mystery. Always got her nose in a book. Joey forgot his inhaler again. Left it on the seat. Good kids. Nothing suggested a man planning to flee, to hurt anyone, to vanish. Dan pocketed the journal, not as evidence, but as a reminder of the man he'd known. A man who'd waved from his porch, who'd driven those kids with care for 15 years. The ad in the lunchbox haunted Dan, its words looping in his mind like a broken record. He called the number every night, sitting in his office long after Carl went home, the receiver cold against his ear. Static, always static, sometimes with a faint hum, like a voice just out of reach. He'd stare at the ad, photocopied and pinned to his bulletin board, the red ink vivid, the words taunting, need babysitter, nights only, call after 12. He drove to the crossing alone one night, October 20, the fog thick, the signal's red light barely aglow. He stood by the tracks, his flashlight beam swallowed by the mist, and waited. The whistle came, faint and wrong, not mechanical but alive, a keening cry that made his heart race. He didn't tell Carl, didn't tell Ruth, didn't tell anyone. He wasn't a man who believed in ghosts, but that sound wasn't right, wasn't natural. Helen Walsh, the Gazette's editor, became Dan's reluctant partner in the mystery. She dug through her archives, her office a haze of cigarette smoke, her fingers smudged with ink, as she flipped through bound copies of the paper. It's not here, she told Dan, her voice raspy, her eyes tired. I checked every issue from 82 to... It's like it was printed for that one copy in Tommy's lunchbox. She hesitated, then told him about Elias Crow, the conductor from the 1897 wreck, her voice dropping to a whisper. Old folks said he was strange. Dan talked to shadows, worked the midnight run. After the wreck they never found his body. They said he took kids, offered rides that never ended, just stories. But she lit another cigarette, her hands trembling slightly. Dan didn't believe in legends, but the whistle he'd heard lingered, a sound he couldn't explain. The investigation stretched into weeks, then months, a relentless grind that wore down the town. The FBI brought in profilers, who built theories about abductions, cults, even human trafficking, but nothing fit the evidence, or lack of. Geologists tested the ground, finding no faults, no sinkholes. A psychic, hired by a desperate parent, claimed the bus was stuck in a fold of time, her words dismissed by Dan, but whispered about in the diner. Search parties dwindled as hope faded, volunteers returning to their lives, their eyes haunted, the families fractured. Some moved away, unable to bear the town's silence. Others stayed, frozen in grief, their lives defined by absence. Linda Weber kept Tommy's room untouched, his Spider-Man posters fading, his bed made, his toys arranged as he'd left them. She'd sit there at night, the lunchbox in her lap, whispering his name, her tears falling on the scratched logo. Paul Klein drank, his marriage to Sarah's mother, Ellen, crumbling under the weight of his anger. He'd walk the tracks at dusk, calling Sarah's name until his voice gave out, his bottle hidden in his coat. Mary and Tom Ellis stopped speaking, their grocery store a ghost of itself, its shelves half-stocked, its door locked more often than not. Clara Rousseau prayed daily, Joey's inhaler on her nightstand, her faith the only thing keeping her upright, her rosary beads worn smooth. The other parents aged overnight. Roy and Diane Thompson, May Chen, Vikram Patel, Rosa Ortiz, Mabel and Jim Holt, Bill and Susan Brooks, David Cohen, John Evans. Their lives a litany of loss, their children's names a prayer. Tommy, Sarah, Ellie, Emma, Joey, Becca, Michael, Lila, Danny, Timmy, Rachel, Nate. Mill Creek unraveled. Its heartbroken. Potlucks stopped, replaced by tense vigils at the town hall. Church attendance dropped, the pews half empty as doubt crept into prayers. Parents kept their kids inside, their eyes scanning the horizon for a yellow bus that never came. Dead Man's Bend became a taboo place, a name you didn't say after dark, a place where the fog lingered like a curse. Teenagers drawn to the mystery dared each other to stand by the tracks at midnight. Ricky Parker, a high school junior, swore he saw headlights in the fog, yellow and flickering, gone when he blinked. His girlfriend Amy heard laughter, like kids playing, but the fields were empty, the air cold, the signal light dimmed, its red glow barely a spark, but no one fixed it. The crossing felt alive, watching, waiting, its presence a weight on the town's soul. By 1984, the case was cold, a file buried in the sheriff's office, its pages yellowing. The FBI left, their reports inconclusive, their agents unwilling to admit defeat. The state police stopped calling, their resources stretched thin. The lunchbox sat in evidence, the ad a riddle no one solved, its words a taunt, nights only. Call after. Mill Creek shrank, its population dropping as businesses closed, Main Street boarded up, the diner half empty, even at breakfast. The crossing was avoided, the tracks left to rust, the fog a constant shroud. But the stories grew, headlights in the mist, children's laughter at midnight, a whistle that wasn't a train. The children's names became a litany, whispered in the town's quiet corners, a wound that never healed. 40 years later, in July 2023, Mill Creek was a husk of its former self, its population barely 600, its main street, a row of empty storefronts, their windows cracked, their signs faded. The fields were wild, overtaken by weeds, the barns collapsing under time's weight. Route 17 was quieter now, traveled mostly by truckers and lost tourists, its potholes deeper, its edges crumbling. Dead Man's Bend remained unchanged, a scar on the landscape, rusted tracks snaking through the earth, the signal post leaning like a drunk, the fog heavier than it should be, a gray veil that clung to the ground. Mia Torres, 25, arrived with her Rust Hunters crew, Liam O'Connor, 24 on camera, and Sophie Nguyen, 23 on sound. Mia, a former journalism student at Ohio State, had dropped out after her brother Alex died in a car crash in 2020. The loss broke her, left her chasing mysteries to fill the void, her YouTube channel a mix of abandoned factories, haunted bridges, and forgotten town. Bus 42, discovered through a true crime podcast, The Vanishing Point, was her obsession, a puzzle that felt personal, as if solving it could make sense of Alex's death, of her own grief. She'd spent weeks researching, reading old articles, scouring forums, piecing together the story of the bus, the lunchbox, the ad. Her dark hair was tied back, her eyes sharp with purpose, her notebook filled with questions no one had answered. The Rust Hunters set up at Dead Man's Bend on a humid afternoon, July 15, 2023, the air thick with the buzz of cicadas and the faint smell of decay, like something rotting just out of sight. The crossing was as the podcast described, rusted tracks, leaning signal, fog that clung like a curse. Mia knelt by the rails, her fingers tracing the cold steel, her breath catching at the weight of the place. Liam adjusted his camera, joking about ghosts to mask his unease, his freckled face flushed in the heat. "Think we'll see the phantom bus," he said, grinning, but his eyes darted to the fog. Sophie, the skeptic, checked her audio gear, her usual sarcasm muted. "This place gives me the creeps," she muttered, glancing at the mist, her hands steady but her voice tight. Mia ignored them, her focus on the tracks, her mind on the journal she'd read about in a forum post, a rumor it existed but was never found. Sophie's shout broke her thoughts. "Yo, there's something in the post." Wedged in the signal's hollow base, rusted and leaning, was a leather-bound journal, its cover cracked but intact. The name Harold Grayson etched in faded ink. The letters worn but clear. Mia's hands shook as she pried it free, the metal creaking, the journal cold despite the summer heat. Liam's camera rolled, capturing her expression, half awe, half fear. Sophie's mic hovered, her breath held. Mia opened the journal, its pages yellowed but legible, the handwriting Harold's careful but growing erratic as the entries progressed. The early pages were mundane: bus routes, oil changes, a note about Joey leaving his inhaler on a seat, another about Sarah's latest book. But after October 12, 1983, the entries turned strange, a descent into a nightmare that didn't end. Day 1. Stopped at the crossing, heard a whistle, no train, drove on, but the road's wrong, fields too flat, sky too dark, Tommy's crying for his mom. I don't know where we are. Day 3. The road loops, same crossing, same red light. Sarah's reading, pretending it's fine. The twins hold hands, whispering. I tried the radio static, no one answered. Day 7. They don't eat, snacks are untouched. Joey's not wheezing, but he's not right. Becca's singing is hollow like an echo. I hear the whistle every night, closer now. Day 10. Twilight all the time, no sun, no stars. I turned back, but it's the same tracks. Danny asked if we're dead. I lied, said we're just lost. Day 17. They don't sleep, they sit, staring, asking when we'll get home. Their voices are wrong, like they're reciting lines. Lila wrote a poem, just one line, over and over. The man in the back is waiting. Day 22. Someone else is on the bus. I didn't see them get on. They sit in the back, always in shadow. The kids don't look at them, but I feel it watching me. I asked Tommy who it is. He drew a picture, hid it. I'm sorry, I can't get us home. Tucked into the journal's back cover was a child's drawing, done in crayon. The colors faded but stark. A yellow bus, its windows filled with stick figures. 12 children, their faces simple dots and lines. Harold at the wheel, his cap unmistakable, and one extra silhouette in the back seat, tall and featureless, its edges smudged as if drawn in a panic. The crayon pressed so hard it tore the paper. Mia read the entries aloud, her voice cracking, the camera catching her wide eyes, her hands trembling. Liam whispered, "This is gonna blow up," his voice a mix of excitement and fear. Sophie, usually quick with a quip, was silent, her knuckles white on the mic, her eyes fixed on the drawing. They uploaded the video that night, titled Bus 42, The Lost Journal, to their YouTube channel from the motel's spotty Wi-Fi. It exploded, hitting 10 million views in 3 days, crashing their server, the comments flooding with theories, prayers and demands for more. News outlets descended on Mill Creek, CNN, Fox, local affiliates from Cleveland and Columbus, followed by ghost hunters, true crime bloggers and tourists with cameras, their cars clogging. The police seized the journal, locking it in evidence at the sheriff's office, now run by Mark Carver, Dan's son, 38, a deputy haunted by his father's failure. Experts from Ohio State verified the handwriting as Harold's, the paper dated to the 1980s, no forgery, no hoax. But the question lingered, unanswered. How had the journal appeared, pristine in a rusted post after 40 years, and who or what was the 13th passenger? Mia stayed in Mill Creek, renting a room at the Sleepy Hollow Motel, a faded relic, with a flickering neon sign and threadbare carpets. Her obsession grew, the journal's words burned into her mind, the drawing haunting her dream. She interviewed Ed Callahan, now 76, his hands trembling as he sipped coffee in his cluttered kitchen, his eyes distant. "The fog ate the bus," he said, staring at the table, his voice low. "I saw it, clear as day, idling, then nothing. That whistle, I still hear it in my dreams, like something calling me." Helen Walsh, 72, chain smoking in her trailer, surrounded by stacks of old newspapers, swore the babysitter ad was a ghost. "I checked every issue from 83, she rasped, exhaling smoke, her fingers stained with nicotine. "Nothing. It's like it was printed for that one paper in Tommy's lunchbox." "I don't know how, Mia." She hesitated, then told Mia about Elias Crow, her eyes darkened. "He was a loner, worked the midnight run. Old folks said he took kids, offered rides that never ended. Check the library, 1902 papers, maybe earlier. Agnes Moore'll help you." Mia visited the families, her notebook filling with their stories, their grief a weight she carried with her. Linda Weber, now 60,
lived in the same trailer. Tommy's room a shrine, his Spider-Man posters brittle, his bed made, his toys untouched. She showed Mia the lunchbox, kept in a glass case like a relic. The Spider-Man logo faded but bright in her memory. He loved that thing, Linda whispered, tears falling, her hands shaking. Why'd he leave it? Why'd they take my boy? Paul Klein, 58, was a shadow, his mechanic's hands shaking from years of drinking, his eyes bloodshot. He slammed his door after growling, "Leave it alone, girl. You'll wake something up." Mary and Tom Ellis, in their 60s, sat in their silent house, their grocery store long closed, its windows boarded. They spoke in monotones, their grief calcified, but Mary clutched a photo of the twins, their blonde braids bright in the faded image, their smiles frozen in night. Clara Russo, 55, held Joey's inhaler, her voice soft, her eyes distant. "He's out there. I feel him, every day, like he's trying to tell me something." Mia camped at the crossing nightly, her recorder running, her flashlight cutting through the fog, hoping to catch the singing locals reported, a faint looping melody, like children in a schoolyard. Most nights she got static, her recorder hissing in the quiet, but on July 20, at 12:03 a.m., it captured a whisper, faint but clear. "You're next." She played it for Liam and Sophie in their motel room, the sound chilling the air. Liam, his freckles stark against his pale face, shook his head. "This isn't content, Mia. This is dangerous." Sophie, her sarcasm gone, nodded, her voice low. "You're too deep in this. Let's go home." But Mia couldn't stop, wouldn't stop. The journal, the ad, the whisper, they were pieces of a puzzle, a mystery tied to her own loss, to Alex's crash, to the questions she couldn't answer.
She dug into the conductor legend, spending hours in the Mill Creek Library, a dusty building with sagging shelves and a faint smell of mildew. Agnes Moore, 78, the librarian, was a reclusive figure, her hair a white bun, her eyes sharp behind thick glasses. She'd lived in Mill Creek her whole life, her memory a vault of the town's secrets. She pulled yellowed records from 1902, her hands steady despite her age. An article about two children, siblings, vanishing near the tracks, their shoes found by the rails. Nothing else. A 1927 diary, donated by a local family, mentioned a man in the fog, offering rides to kids who never came home, their parents left with empty rooms. Agnes hesitated, her eyes darting to the window, then showed Mia a ledger from 1897, tucked in a locked drawer, its pages brittle, its ink faded. It listed Elias Crow, conductor of the midnight freight train, killed in the wreck at Dead Man's Bend. "He was odd," Agnes said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "Talked to someone who wasn't there, like he was answering a voice only he heard. After the wreck they never found his body. Folks said he's still out there, waiting, his lantern swinging in the fog." Mia's skin prickled, her notebook filling with names, dates, questions. The ad's words, "Nights only. Call after 12" echoed the midnight run, a connection she couldn't ignore. A subplot emerged when Mia met Clara Russo's cousin, Evelyn, 52, a quiet woman who worked at the post office. Evelyn revealed a family secret, her voice trembling as she invited Mia to her small apartment. Clara's grandfather, Samuel Russo, had been a brakeman on Crow's train in 1897, working the midnight run. Evelyn showed Mia his journal, hidden in Clara's attic, its pages brittle, its leather cover cracked. Samuel wrote of Crow's obsession with the crossing, claiming it led somewhere else, a place not on any map. One entry dated September 1897 chilled Mia to the bone. "Elias says the children are his now. He hears them singing at midnight, calling him to the tracks." Clara had kept it secret, fearing it tied her family to the crossing's curse, her faith shaken by the possibility that her grandfather knew more than he'd told. Mia photographed the pages, her hands shaking. The connection to the 1983 ad, undeniable. The words "Nights only" a echo of Samuel's midnight. Another thread appeared when Mia met Mark Carver, Dan's son, now 38, a deputy sheriff with his father's limp and a heavier burden. Dan had died in 1995, a heart attack at 62, his obsession with Bus 42 blamed for his decline. Mark, who'd been 10 in 1983, remembered the town's fear, the way his father changed, his laughter replaced by silence. He met Mia at the Mill Creek Diner, its Formica tables cracked, its jukebox long broken, and shared Dan's old case notes, yellowed and coffee-stained, kept in a shoebox under his desk. Dad thought the town was hiding something, Mark said, his voice low, his eyes scanning the diner for eavesdroppers. The elders Helen, Agnes, a few others knew more about Crow than they let on. They wanted it buried, told Dad to stop digging. Dan's notes hinted at a conspiracy. Town leaders in 1983 had discouraged questions about the crossing's history, fearing it would stir things up. One note scribbled in Dan's shaky hand read, "Talk to Old Man Holt. Says Crow was no accident. Something took him, same as the kid." Mark warned Mia, his voice tight, "Be careful. Some folks here still think the crossing's alive, that it listens." Mia contacted Dr. Ellen Voss, a paranormal investigator from Chicago with a PhD in folklore and a reputation for tackling cases others dismiss. Voss, 50, arrived in Mill Creek with a van full of equipment, EMF meters, thermal cameras, audio recorders, her gray hair pulled back, her eyes sharp with curiosity and caution. She reviewed Mia's recordings at the motel, her face grim as she listened to the whisper, "This isn't just a haunting," she said, her voice steady but low. "The crossing's a liminal space, a door between worlds. Something's holding the bus there, and it's not letting go." She cited cases, a bridge in Kentucky, a road in Nevada, where people vanished, their voices caught on tape years later. "You're stirring it up, Mia," she warned, her eyes searching Mia's face. "Be careful what you invite." But Mia couldn't stop. The journal's words, the drawing, the ad pulling her deeper, a thread tied to Alex's death, to her need for answers. A new subplot emerged. The Watchers, a secretive group of older residents, who met in the basement of the VFW hall, led by Agnes Moore. They believed the crossing was a sacred place, a gate to another realm, and had monitored it since the 1950s, documenting sightings, headlights, laughter, the whistle. Agnes, her hands trembling, admitted to Mia that they'd found Harold's journal in 1984, hidden in a ditch near the crossing, but kept it secret, fearing it would draw outsiders. They'd placed it in the signal post in 2023, hoping it would appease the crossing, a ritual born of desperation. "Some doors shouldn't be opened," Agnes said, her voice a whisper, her eyes avoiding Mia's. Mia was furious. Why hide it? But intrigued. The Watchers' secrecy a clue to the town's fear. Another character entered the story, Caleb Crow, a reclusive descendant of Elias, 55, living in a trailer 10 miles from town, his eyes haunted, his hands scarred from years of odd jobs. Mia tracked him down, knocking on his door at dusk, her heart pounding. Caleb, gaunt and unshaven, claimed Elias was his great-uncle, cursed by the crossing after a deal gone wrong, a pact to guard the gate in exchange for power, though he wouldn't say what kind. His stories were fragmented, half mad, but he showed Mia a locket, engraved with Elias's initials, found near the tracks in 1898, by his grandfather. "He's still there," Caleb whispered, his voice barely audible. "He takes what's offered." The kids they were offered. Mia's heart raced. The ad's words, "Nights only, call after 12, feeling like a summons, a lure from something ancient. Mia's nights at the crossing grew intense, her equipment expanding with Voss's help. She set up cameras, catching orbs of light that defied explanation, their movement erratic, like fireflies with purpose. On July 28, her recorder caught singing, children's voices, faint and looping, a melody like Ring Around the Rosie, its notes distorted, as if sung underwater. On August 3, she saw headlights, yellow and flickering, appearing in the fog, then vanishing, her heart pounding as she chased them, her boots slipping on the tracks. Her thermal camera showed a cold spot, human-shaped, unmoving, by the rails. Voss analyzed the data, her voice tense. "It's not residual, Mia. Something's active, aware, and it knows you're here." Mia's obsession deepened, her dreams filled with the bus, the kids' faces, Tommy's grin, Sarah's book, the twins' braids, Joey's inhaler, Becca's song, Michael's sketches, Lila's poems, Danny's skateboard, Jenny's horses, Timmy's bottle caps, Rachel's stars, Nate's basketball, and always in the back seat, the shadow watching. A new subplot emerged. Laura Bennett, a former classmate of the missing children, now 49, a recluse living in a cabin outside town. Laura had been on bus 42 the day before the vanishing, sick with a fever on October 12. She met Mia at the diner, her eyes hollow, her hands clutching a coffee mug. "I should have been on that bus," she said, her voice trembling. I dream about them, Mia. They're still there, singing, but there's someone else with them. Someone tall. Laura shared a memory. The day before, Harold had seemed distracted, checking his rearview mirror more than usual, as if watching the back seat. Mia's pulse quickened. Had Harold seen the shadow even? Another thread. Reverend Thomas Pike, 65, pastor of Mill Creek Baptist, who'd led prayers in 1983 but now doubted his faith. He met Mia at the church, its pews dusty, its stained glass cracked. I told them God would bring the kids back, he said, his voice heavy. I lied. The crossing's not God's work, it's something else. He showed Mia a 1983 church ledger, noting a stranger who attended services the week before the vanishing. A tall man, face obscured, who sat in the back, silent. He was there the day it happened. Pike's, then gone, like he was never real. Mia's mind raced. The 13th silhouette. On October 12, 2023, the 40th anniversary, Mill Creek held a vigil at the crossing, drawing hundreds families, locals, strangers moved by Mia's video. Candles flickered in the fog, their lights swallowed by the mist, their glow a faint defiance. Linda Weber held Tommy's lunchbox. Paul Klein stood alone, his bottle hidden. The Ellises clutched each other. Clara prayed, her rosary beads clicking. Mia and Voss were there, cameras and meters ready. Liam and Sophie filming from a distance, their faces pale. At midnight, the whistle sounded, louder than ever, a keening cry that froze the crowd, their breaths held, their candles trembling. Then came the singing, children's voices, clear and chilling, looping a nursery rhyme, Ring Around the Rosie, its notes warped, like a record played backward. Voss's EMF meter screamed, its needle pinned, her thermal camera showing multiple cold spots, human-shaped, moving in the fog. Mia's camera caught a shadow, tall, featureless, gliding toward the tracks, its edges smudged like the drawing. Linda screamed, "Tommy," and collapsed, her lunchbox falling into the dirt. Paul dropped his candle, his voice hoarse. "Sarah." The crowd panicked, some running, others praying, their candles scattering like stars in the fog. Mia returned alone the next night, October 13, the journal in her hands, her heart pounding like a drum. She stood by the tracks, the fog thick, the air cold, the signal post gone, but its shadow lingering in her mind. "Harold," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Who's with you?" "Tommy." "Sarah, are you there?" The whistle screamed, a sound that tore through her, her flashlight flickering, then dying, plunging her into darkness. The fog closed in, heavy, like hands pressing against her chest. She felt eyes cold and heavy, watching from the mist, their gaze a weight she couldn't shake. Her recorder left running, caught a voice, not hers, neither male nor female, neither human nor not. "Come back." She ran, tripping over the rails, her breath ragged, her boots slipping in the dirt, and didn't stop until she reached her motel, her hands shaking as she locked the door. She played the recording, the whisper looping. "Come back." It wasn't a threat, not exactly. It was an invitation, a pull she felt in her bones. Mia left Mill Creek the next day, October 14, her bags packed, her crew gone, Liam and Sophie begging her to let it go. But the crossing didn't let go, its fog following her in her dreams, its whisper in her ears. The signal post was dismantled, the tracks cordoned off with police tape, but the fog lingers, thicker than anywhere else, a gray shroud that hides more than it reveals. Locals avoid rare stories growing. A trucker hearing children's voices on his CB radio, singing Ring Around the Rosie. A hiker seeing headlights, yellow and flickering, vanishing when he blinked. A farmer finding a crayon, drawing in the dirt. A bus with 13 silhouettes, the last one smiled. The journal is locked in evidence, its pages copied and shared online, each reader drawn to the same question: who was the 13th passenger? The drawing circulates, a viral mystery, the smudged silhouette, a puzzle no one solved. Agnes Moore in her library keeps the 1897 ledger locked, her hands trembling as she whispers to no one, "It's not done." The watchers still meet in the VFW basement, their numbers dwindling, their prayers unanswered, their fear growing. Caleb Crow disappeared, his trailer empty, the locket gone, rumored to be buried by the tracks. Clara Russo keeps her grandfather's journal hidden, her faith shaken, her prayers faltering. Mark Carver patrols the crossing, his father's notes in his pocket, his doubts a weight he can't shake. Reverend Pike preaches to an empty church, his sermons about forgiveness, but his eyes see the stranger in the back pew, silent and tall.
Mia, back in Columbus, can't escape. She uploads one last video, a quiet apology to the families, her voice breaking, her eyes shadowed. I thought I could find them, she says, her hands clasped, her notebook open to the ad's words, but some things aren't meant to be found. She dreams of the bus, of Tommy's grin, Sarah's book, the twins' braids, Joey's inhaler, Becca's song, Michael's sketches, Lila's poems, Danny's skateboard, Jenny's horses, Timmy's bottle caps, Rachel's stars, Nate's basketball, and always in the back seat, the shadow, watching, its presence a question she can't answer. She wakes to the whisper, come back, and knows she will someday, drawn to the crossing, like a moth to flame. The families carry on, their grief a constant companion. Linda Weber visits the crossing, leaving flowers by the rails, her hands trembling as she whispers Tommy's name. Paul Klein walks the tracks at dusk, his bottle hidden, calling for Sarah, his voice lost in the fog. The Ellises light candles in their empty house, the twins' laughter a memory that fades. Clara Russo prays, Joey's inhaler in her hand, her hope a fragile thing, her faith tested by Samuel's journal. The other families, Becca's, Michael's, Lila's, Danny's, Jenny's, Timmy's, Rachel's, Nate's, carry their loss like stones, their lives defined by absence, their children's names a prayer, Tommy, Sarah, Ellie, Emma, Joey, Becca, Michael, Lila, Danny, Jenny, Timmy, Rachel. And at Dead Man's Bend, when the clock strikes midnight, the fog thickens, the tracks hum with no train in sight, and the air grows still. The brave or foolish who linger swear they see headlights, yellow and flickering, then gone. They hear singing, faint and looping, a nursery rhyme carried on the wind, its notes warped and wrong, and in the silence that follows, a whisper, soft as death, cold as the fog, you're next. The crossing remains, a scar on the landscape, its fog a warning, its tracks a path to nowhere. The town of Mill Creek is quieter now, its people older, its stories heavier. The diner serves coffee to strangers, the library's shelves gather dust, the church's bells ring to empty pews, but the crossing doesn't sleep. It waits, as it always has, since Elias Crow's train derailed in 1897, since children vanished in 1902, since Bus 42 drove into the fog and never came back. The ad, nights only, call after 12, is a riddle unsolved, a lure from something older than the town, something that knows your name. Laura Bennett, the classmate who survived, visits the crossing once a year, on October 12, leaving a single candle, its flames snuffed by the fog. She dreams of her friends, their faces young, their voices singing, and wakes with tears, the shadow in her dreams taller each time. Reverend Pike keeps the 1983 ledger hidden, the stranger's presence a secret he can't confess. The watchers, now just Agnes and two others, pray in the VFW basement, their voices trembling, their candles dim. Caleb Crow's trailer is overgrown, his locket rumored to glow in the dirt by the tracks, seen by a hiker who fled, his story dismissed but shared online. Mia's life is changed, her videos quieter, her eyes haunted, her sleep broken by the whisper, come back. She keeps the recorder, playing it in the dark, the voice a call she can't ignore. She writes in her notebook, pages filled with questions, theories, fears. Is the shadow, Elias Crow, guarding his gate? Is it something older, something that was never human? Are the children still on the bus, driving a road that never ends? She doesn't know, but she feels them, their voices in the fog, their faces in her dreams. And at Dead Man's Bend, the fog never lifts, not fully. It clings to the tracks, a shroud that hides more than it reveals. The brave or foolish who linger hear the whistle, feel the eyes, see the headlights. The children sing, their voices a loop that never breaks, a melody that pulls at the heart. And the whisper, always the whisper, waits for the next to answer its call. Your